All right, hi everyone. This is Aaron Larson, Executive Editor of Power Magazine, and today I'm joined by Kelly Tomblin, the CEO of El Paso Electric, and I'm also joined by Paul Browning. He's the President and CEO of Mitsubishi Power Americas, as well as recently being named the Deputy Head of Energy Transition and Power Headquarters, and Chairman of the Board for Europe, Middle East, and Africa with Mitsubishi Power. So thank you both for joining me. And I understand that the two of you are going to be working together. You've got a kind of a special announcement, so can you explain how you're going to be decarbonizing the power grid together?
Well, EPE, El Paso Electric, recently announced our 80% carbon neutral goal by 2035 and the pursuit of 100% by 2045. So what that means is that we have to get pretty aggressive. We're thrilled right now that we're probably around half of the carbon footprint of most utilities in Texas and a third of the carbon footprint of utilities in New Mexico where we do business. We're proud that we eliminate coal early on. But what we do know now is that we don't have responsive generation to support further renewable development, and we have 270 megawatts of renewables positioned to come on in the next couple of years, and we need responsive generation, one that starts quickly, and with that, and our agreement to, after that, new gas-fired generation is to work very hard to be able to use hydrogen in that same turbine. So we selected Mitsubishi for a number of reasons. We love their smart turbine, but more than that, we see the same commitment that we have to using technology to make sure that we're meeting our clean energy goals. So we're looking forward to the vast amount of experience and knowledge they bring, and we'll begin now. Actually, we're starting to construct soon, very soon, the next month or so.
Wow.
Yeah, we find more and more nowadays our customers, we need to interact with them in a much more comprehensive way than we have in the past. And it's all around this need to get to net zero. So as more and more of our customers set these net zero targets, like Kelly just described for El Paso Electric, we're signing joint development agreements where we come in and we help them sort of develop their strategy to get to net zero. And one of the most important parts of that strategy, and one of the newer parts, is hydrogen, and the role that hydrogen is going to play in helping bring even more renewables onto the grid. And I think the challenge that Kelly and El Paso have is they have this ambition to add a lot more renewable power to their grid, which is intermittent. And they have to have a dispatchable source of power to offset that intermittency. But they also need that dispatchable source of power to have a future of zero carbon. Mm-hmm. And that's really the challenge that we're working together to solve with our Newman 6 project.
And for us it was critical because unlike other utilities, we just don't have that resource on our grid today. And even with the amount of renewables we have on today, we're not being effective because we are leaving power plants running when they perhaps do not need to be. And if we don't fix that, we won't optimize our renewable resources.
Right. And I know I listened to you speaking during a panel earlier today talking about some of the different resources you have. You mentioned nuclear, mm-hmm. You mentioned some of these gas plants. To get to the decarbonization goals that you've set, what else do you need to add in addition going forward?
Like I said, we are lucky that we did remove coal from our portfolio. So what we're dealing with now are just gas-fired generation, combustion turbines, and combined cycle. Combined cycle, while more efficient, isn't great for us because it uses a lot of water. This particular setup will save us 600 million gallons of water a year. So we're trying to solve for a couple different things. We can't just solve for climate. We have to solve for water. We're in the desert. So I think what we're looking forward to right now is being able to solve for both of those simultaneously. And I think that's the real magic that we think can happen through this agreement.
Okay.
And El Paso Electric is exactly the kind of utility that got us originally thinking about hydrogen. They, in 2016, they retired their last coal-fired power mm-hmm. plant, and the question we asked ourselves is, well, is El Paso Electric going to continue to decarbonize now that all the coal's gone? And of course, the answer is yes. And their only remaining fossil fuel is natural gas. The only, real answer there is they need a solution that allows them to use less natural gas in the future. And that's what really led us to green hydrogen. Now, the neat thing about green hydrogen is that not only, as we transition from natural gas to hydrogen, allows them to use less natural gas, it also allows them to store renewable power. And so, we have to build so much renewable power that at some times of the year, sometimes of the day, we're going to be producing more renewable power than we need. Right now, that renewable power just gets curtailed and wasted. We'll have a technology that can actually store that renewable power as hydrogen and then make it available to use later instead of natural gas.
And we've seen what happens with the price impact if you don't do that. And we are a price sensitive region, and we can't afford to have electric rates that are 20 something, 30 something. We've seen that happen where they've added renewables without storage capability.
So thinking of the storage, how will El Paso Electric build that storage into their system? Are there salt domes there, or are you using pipelines, or are you using some other method to build and store the hydrogen?
That's exactly what our joint development agreement is
trying to figure out.
The question that we're going to answer together.
Okay.
Is, we do have a salt dome in Delta, Utah, which is not that far away from El Paso. So that's one option that we could look at and connecting it through pipeline. But we're looking at other options that would be more local. And that's what our teams are going to be working together on.
And I think that's a real important note, because hydrogen is getting so much attention right now that we have to realize that we have to pursue things we don't have every answer for. And I think there's sometimes a hesitancy, or has been in the utility space, not to really go very aggressively to somewhat of the unknown. And I think that's where we are now. We're willing to explore something together and find the answers over time.
And have you worked together before on any decarbonization goals, or is this your first foray in a partnership?
Well, we've got a long history. Really, when you're putting natural gas on your grid and retiring coal, you are decarbonizing your power grid. So in that sense, we have been working together for some time on this. But this is a new level of engagement, I think.
And I don't think people give enough space or conversation to this idea, the more efficient power plant you run, that it is decarbonizing it. I have an old power plant that we'll replace that is grandfathered, meaning it doesn't have pollution control. It's really inefficient. So really replacing the worst thing on your system, if it's first coal and then it's inefficient power plants, and then even sending price signals to our customers helps decarbonize, because I can direct usage to a time that I'm using my most efficient resource. So there's a lot more than just replacing power plants that goes into decarbonization, or bringing on renewables that goes into decarbonization.
And Paul, can you talk a little bit about the Smart ER M501 GAC?
Yeah.
And how that's complementing renewables?
Right. So what El Paso Electric has purchased is our most flexible gas turbine. This gas turbine is capable of starting very quickly, ramping up very quickly, ramping down very quickly. It's exactly the kind of resource you need to offset that intermittency of renewables that I talked about earlier. And so as El Paso Electric, puts more and more renewables on their grid, they have a greater and greater need for this super flexible peaking power plant that can offset that intermittency. But then again, what's really important about the investment they've made is they've invested in a product that has a future of 100% hydrogen capability. And so they're basically future-proofing this asset so that it's not just what they need today, it's also what they need in the future.
And it was really important for the permitting process. As you know, we have to get a permit, an air permit, and other regulatory approvals to build this power plant. And hearing that really helped get that across the finish line. It helped generate community support, which I think we all know is very important when you're trying to build anything. So I think having that storyline and pursuing it authentically has been really important to us. And I said it once, but I'll say it again. For us, it's even more critical. We are an isolated utility. We can't rely on other power producers. And the fact we're bringing on significant renewables without flexible generation, for us, it's really critical, and more so for us than other utilities.
And I know you mentioned during the panel discussion earlier that El Paso Electric maintained reliability through the winter storms back in February. How was that possible, and how would potentially having this gas turbine make that even more reliable?
Well, every situation's different, but we did maintain reliability because we had undertaken a significant weatherization program after a freeze a decade before. But we had built a power plant that runs on fuel oil as well as gas, so we were able to convert it when gas wasn't available. So I think we were really proud. I had my plant operator on CNN, and that's really people, to have your plant operator who was an intern who has a really good story, be able to tell the story of diversity in fuel, and I would say diversity in spirit, because certainly the employees were determined to keep it on. So I think this will just add to the mix, because with this power plant, the flexibility, while we won't design it to run on fuel oil, it'll be a part of the mix that allows us greater optionality. I know everybody's gone around with all the slides that show how renewables react, and we don't have the cloud cover that comes on instantaneously, but a lot of places do. And I think this turbine will be used, also in those areas, probably even more beneficially.
Yeah, and another thing that a lot of Texas utilities are paying attention to is, if you have this dual fuel capability, you talked about fuel oil and natural gas. Well, in the future, it'll be natural gas and hydrogen. And that, during Uri, one of the problems that we had was not just that power plants were freezing up, it's that the natural gas production and transportation sort of froze up, and so there were power plants that were able to run that just they couldn't get natural gas. So if you have another fuel available, in this case hydrogen, which is stored in a locally and available, that it's another form of resource adequacy, particularly during extreme weather events.
And I think that's just something people could not understand. They kept saying to me, "Oh, you're so lucky you're not in ERCOT." I was like, it had nothing to do with being in ERCOT. Nobody could get gas. If we had to get gas, we would have been out of power too. That we had dual fuel capability, and this is just another dual fuel that will give us other benefits that diesel does not, especially in the clean energy spectrum.
Right. Okay, well, thank you both for visiting with me. Is there any last words you'd like to leave the audience with? Or?
I think we're really excited about the possibilities for the future. I know that so many of us are struggling to find a direct path to our goals. As I said today, the 80% by 2035 is certain, but the path to 2045 isn't for 100%. So I think it's important that we continue to invest and partner with people. We could not do this on our own. We don't have the research capability, so we're really excited to have Mitsubishi as a partner, and we're looking forward to figuring this all out together.
Yeah, and just the last thing I would say is we learn from our customers every day. And these joint development agreements, we have one with El Paso Electric, we have others we've announced with other customers, and we have others, that we will be announcing. And it really does allow us to play a role of sort of industry-wide knowledge sharing around net zero. And because everybody's trying to solve the same problem, but every utility has a different set of constraints that they're working toward. And so being able to learn from one another and understand, what worked for Entergy, what worked for El Paso Electric, what worked for Puget Sound Energy, that's an important role that we're hoping to play.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it does give us an industry working group of sorts to learn together. So that, I think, is a really important aspect of the JDA and our partnership.
Okay. Well, thank you both.
And thank you for the business.
Thank you. Thank you for the interview.
Okay.